Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm Fahima Mohammed, your host and relationship coach. Once again, we have another episode for you, and I'm really looking forward to our guest all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. You can definitely join in the conversation, as our topic tonight is what makes and breaks a solid relationship. You can definitely question my guest tonight, who is also a resident alim in Georgia. So make sure that you take advantage and you can call in directly to the studio to speak to my guest tonight by calling on 01924 231 083. Please do ask the bill payer's permission before calling in, as standard network rates do apply. We have another option for you if you want to send in your questions or any queries or comments anonymously. You can do so with our free WhatsApp service, and that number is 07585835150. We're going to have all these numbers for the rest of the evening so that you can actually take notes, dial in, or send in your comments, and I will read them out for you. Now, we talk about relationships a lot, as you know, in this program, and it seems to be ongoing. And I love to bring in different guests in order to give their perspective so that we can have as much information with regards to having better homes, better, sort of units. And especially if we are looking for a partner, to sort of have those initial ways of searching and making sure that we take those steps necessary beforehand. Or even if you are already in a relationship, then you can actually take steps to actually improve and live much more fulfilled lives. Well, I also want you to now take the opportunity with myself to welcome my guest, Hassan Faye. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Fahima. How's everyone doing? The guests who are watching online?
We are doing fine, and I especially am so grateful to have you tonight all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you so much, Hassan, for being with us today. We've been planning this for a long time, and I'm really excited. I'm so intrigued by what you do, and it's quite inspiring. So for the guests tonight, firstly, please explain, who is Hassan? What do you do? And we'll get into the conversation afterwards.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So I'll take a little bit to explain who I am. It might take a little while because my journey's been very interesting. So I'm originally from Gambia, West Africa. I came to the States, to Atlanta, Georgia, when I was 9 years old. This was 23 years ago now, and I've lived here since. And it's been a wonderful roller coaster of a ride. I'm in Atlanta by myself, no mother, no father, no brothers, no sisters. They're all back home. Now, people probably like, yo, how did you do that? But I had a wonderful woman who adopted me when I came here. She was a friend of my mother. She adopted me. And as soon as I came, she made sure that I went to memorize the Quran. So when I was 13, I finished memorizing the Quran. And then I continued on my studies, my secular studies. And at about 20, I kind of was just like, look, I've memorized the Quran. I lead the prayers. People, enjoy it and everything. That's cool. But I have no idea what the heck I'm saying. So I continued my studies on, and I went to study Arabic in Dallas, Texas, of all places, right? To study Arabic. People will probably think like Egypt or Syria or, one of these places, Yemen. But yeah, I did it in Dallas, Texas. And that was about a year. And when I finished, I came back to finish my my university, and I studied psychology. And then soon thereafter, my masjid hired me on to be the youth director and full-time Quran teacher as well. So I was doing both of those at my masjid, and currently I am the associate imam and the youth director for my mosque. Just to kind of wrap it up, but yeah, that's the synopsis of the life of Hassan.
Absolutely amazing. That's why I said at the beginning, you are very inspirational. And, at the end of the day, I'm so glad you shared that story, because it is really important that we understand, one's journey and how they come to where they are. And, you've taken that initiative, and you're still, mashallah, you're young enough to even live so many years ahead of you, but you've achieved so much and you've accomplished so much, and especially within the deen, because a lot of the times at that age, a lot of people don't really find themselves, going towards that direction. So I'm really, really, impressed. And at the same time, you do so much work for the community and the youth, and that's what we need. So that's why it's so important to have your vision, your insights, because I'm sure you get a lot of people probably even approaching you a lot easier, because you look at some, usual imams, they're not necessarily someone that maybe people might feel comfortable to talk to with certain topics and subjects, especially when it comes to relationships. So I guess you hear plenty of stories as well, which we're going to get into. Obviously, everything's private and confidential, so we're going to talk about it as case studies, not mentioning anyone.
Yeah.
But it's important that we do raise the issues, because this is what our Muslim communities are facing in the West, regardless of where you are across the globe. We are living in the West, and we are facing numerous challenges when it comes to relationships. And our topic tonight is what makes and breaks a solid relationship. Now, in your opinion, how would you even define a solid relationship? Because we talk about relationships quite general. So how would you firstly even sort of explain what does that mean? Because, people get into relationships a lot. So what is the difference about it being solid? There's always a hierarchy. So I always feel that, when I think of solid myself, I think of a foundation. So is that correct? Or is it something else in your mind?
Yes, actually, funny enough, that's the word that came to mind when you said solid. So with everything, with every structure that you have, a relationship is a structure much like any other structure. The foundation is the most important piece of it, right? When you're building a building, you're worried about the foundation. If the foundation is not solid and it's on shaky ground, then no matter how beautiful the building might look on top of that, foundationally, you're always worried this might crumble and fall. So my definition of a solid relationship is first and foremost the foundation. What is your foundation? And as Muslims, we know, and I stress this, and I can't stress this enough, but I stress it to people that I talk to, young couples who come to me, or young sisters or young brothers, and ask me, what should I look for? The first thing I tell them, I said, foundationally, make sure that you look for someone who is trying to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have to, that has to be the first thing. If your relationship is not built upon getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your relationship is nothing, right? It doesn't matter how pretty it looks on the outside. And, we live in a very interesting world, right? Because, we live amongst people who are not Muslim, right? Especially here in the West. And, you see a lot of these things that people say relationship goals, right? And usually when people say relationship goals, what I see is people who are not on the deen, people who are outside of the faith, and that's who their relationship goal, right? And I'm always thinking, subhanAllah, like, how are their relationship goals when their foundation is based solely on the dunya, right? And there's no God, there's no God central, there's no God in their lives, or they're not centered with God, right? So how is that possible that you have a solid foundation in a relationship with that? And those that you see that do work, even outside of the faith, they'll tell you, the Denzel Washingtons and whatnot, they'll tell you God, they put God first, right? So if you put God first in your relationship, I think to me, that's the foundation. And we can go more and more into that. But that's what I say. That's what I think about when I think about a solid relationship. I think the foundation and the foundation has to be God.
Absolutely correct. And I couldn't agree more. The only problem I have when we actually mention that is, as we are growing up, and especially as Muslims, we are taught the rituals from a very young age, and we even can practice from a very young age. But I find that the actual iman, the faith, and the actual connection takes years to build. And for some people, they don't actually feel that kind of connection. And that's where they can kind of be on a sort of like a ground which is slightly shaky. So when they are even encouraging young people to get married, is it fair to say that, there is potential, but even that potential, how do you gauge whether or not it is something that you can go into? Because it's really scary when someone's not solid and having that foundation at a young age. And is that expectation too high for some people as well? Because not everybody has that upbringing. Not everybody has that connection. Not everybody understands faith unless they go through experiences in life and they really appreciate it as well. So how do you explain to youngsters, like you had that, sort of like foundation, you had the parenting, you had whatever it may be, even the opportunities, right? But even with all of that, a lot of people don't connect to their faith. So how do you go around that then when you are looking for a relationship and you're young and you're struggling with your faith?
That's a good question. So the first thing I would say, I always tell people, when you're looking for a spouse, don't look for a potential, right? Don't marry the potential, or don't say, oh, this person looks like in a few years, this is where they'll be. No, you want to marry someone where they are and make sure you yourself are okay with where they are and you're comfortable with where they are. Because if you're not, you're setting yourself up for failure. And then you're also putting this pressure on this the other person, because maybe their growth looks very different than your growth. Right. So if you're not okay with who they are, and then you're 2 years into the marriage and you're like, well, I thought that you would have been farther in your iman, or like, how do you gauge stuff like that? You can't. Right. So that's the first thing that I would say. Always make sure that whoever you're talking to, whoever you marry, what you see about them and what you see from them, you're comfortable with that and you're okay with that. And you know that if they, let's say this is where they are and they don't go any further, you would be comfortable spending the rest of your life with that person, right, as they are. That's the first thing. And secondly, advice for like young people who are struggling with their faith and they're in a space where they feel like, you know what, I'm not quite there yet. To be honest, I don't know if that's the time to get married then. Right? I'm not sure that that's the time to get married. And I'm just really thinking out loud here, but we talk about, oh, before you get married, be at a certain financial place. Before you get married, be at a certain emotional place. Yeah. So how come we don't stress that when it comes to the deen as well, right? Why is like, well, just get married. We're forcing young people to just get married so they can stay away from the haram, but then their relationship ends up breaking up because they weren't ready for that level of commitment, deen-wise. So that's my advice.
I love that. I love to keep it raw on the show. And I think we need to be a little bit tougher as well, because when we're saying things like this, that is the preparation. You're absolutely right. And I'm so happy you said that, because that is really something that people, when they say we need to work on ourselves, there's self-awareness and, all of these things. Well, that is part of it. Improve in your deen, improve in your faith, in your belief. If that's what you want to live by, don't wait for it to come later on. Do that first, and then the relationship will actually last, inshallah, and be solid, and actually have a foundation where, even regardless of any of the cracks, you'll have something strong to come back from. And I absolutely love that, because I think, that is so important, that a lot of us feel that, we are actually not, ready for it. But we are coming on to a very short break so quickly. However, please stay with me and we'll come back, and inshallah, we will continue with our discussion. Take care. Salam. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. Having a wonderful conversation with our lovely guest tonight, all the way from Georgia in Atlanta. And he is also an associate imam. We are so lucky and blessed to have him tonight. Discussing before the break with regards to finding somebody and having that foundation. And the most important foundation is having a strength in your iman, in your faith, and in your belief. Hassan, as we were talking before that, we were talking about, knowing that somebody is God-centric. Now, how also do you define if someone is God-centric? Because a lot of people say, well, I hear this a lot. When people are looking for a partner, they're like, do you pray? Do you fast? Do you do all of these things? Is that equivalent to someone who's religious? Now, that's a wide question, and I think and I want to hear your opinion on it, because I'm sure there's various perspectives that I know you're smiling right now, because I think you probably heard this before, but I want to know, because is that enough? Is that enough to show that, that person's religious because they actually, praying, fasting? Is that enough? I personally have my own answer, but I want to hear yours first.
Yeah, so I think, like you said, it's very vast, but let's just put it this way. I know a lot of people who beyond pray 5 times a day and fast in Ramadan and all of that stuff, and they're horrible human beings. I'm just going to put it that way. Why do I say that? Because, you can do all of these things and then you're horrible to other human beings. Is that you being God-centric, right? Or you gossip about others, is that you being God-centric? No, right? Islam is an entire package, and we have to look at it as such, right? One part of it is the ritualistic part, and the other part of it is the spirituality aspect. Now, the spirituality aspect denotes that you treat other people right, that you're kind to your family, that you smile at people, that you're morally upright, right? All of those things come together. And when you have those two, you can't divorce one from the other. When you have those two together, then you can say, okay, you know what? I'm a God-centric person, right? God is my center. God is my core, right? So what does that mean? That that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you're like seeing him, and if you're not seeing him, or if you can't worship him in that way, you know that he's seeing you, right? That to me is the core definition of being God-centric. Doesn't mean that you're perfect. It doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes. We all do. Me sitting here talking to you, riddled with mistakes. But at the end of the day, what is our core? What do we go back to, right? Like think about it like as a rubber band that you put you put your hand in a rubber band and then you stretch it out. No matter how much you stretch the rubber band out, it always comes back to the beginning point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're God-centric, you'll always come back to the beginning, which is your core, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is God. So that's what my definition of being God-centric is.
I love it. That's
Hope that
really
made
great.
sense.
And yeah, of course, it makes complete sense, and that's exactly what it is. But could you give us some examples? So if people are looking for a partner, what would be the questions they would ask instead of just the fact that they fast and they pray? Because for me personally, it's about values, but then also at the same time, how do you associate those rituals with a person, and how do you gauge whether or not those two mix from what you defined? What are the kind of things that you would sort of like, for example, even if you looking at a friend and knowing what is their character, how would you know their character? I mean, we're not here to really scrutinize or judge or comment, but we do need to know what we're getting into. And if you say we need to accept someone, how do we know what we're accepting and what's there? Because at the beginning, we are putting our best foot forward. We are, putting our projected self instead of our true self. We want to get to know the true self. So in a way, your psychology is going to come into this too. And, and that's what I love about people that, have, religious, deen knowledge and with psychology, which a lot of us don't have. And I think putting it together can be really powerful, especially when it comes to relationship issues. So because, studying human mind and behavior and understanding all of that, I think, we are lacking. We talk about science a lot in Islam, but I think psychology is just as important. So in order for us to actually build. So from your experience, like how would you guide a youngster who is looking for somebody, and, what would be the questions or the things that you would sort of list to say, this is what's important when you are chatting, when you're talking, or the things to consider? Because now we've discussed it's the foundation. So what is this foundation? Let's bring it into sort of a list of things that you need to look out for in order for us to sort of say, okay, this is the actual embodiment of a foundation.
Okay, yeah, that's a perfect question. So I remember one of my students asked me before he got married. He asked me a question. He said, "What should I look for in a spouse when I'm looking?" And I told him, I said, you know what? A lot of us look for wives, but we should be looking for like mothers for our children, and vice versa. So a lot of sisters may be looking for husbands, but they should be looking for fathers for their children, right? And the reason why I said that is because if you can see someone being a father or a mother, usually that means that you know their character, and that takes a while to get to that, right? So this whole talk to someone for a month and then khalas, you're good. I don't think that's the ideal. I think that does happen because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who changes the hearts, and he's the one who controls the hearts. So at the end of the day, you can talk to someone for a month and like just something about it, you just know, right? That's happened. But you need to see this person that you're trying to marry in multiple different scenarios, right? For you to really gauge, how they are. And
Mm.
in the first month, in the first 2 months, look, they could put up that front for a while, but 6 months down the line, you can only hold on to that or live a lie for so long. There are always telltale signs where you'll be able to pick out small little things that, that was a bit odd how you said this to that person, or went to this restaurant, how you treated the waiter or the waitress. I noticed that you're not a person who tips. These little things. It tells you it tells you what the personality of the person that you're talking to is. They can't really fake it for so long. And the more you talk to them, the more issues you bring up, because you have to bring up the tough issues. You know what? Nowadays, we shy away from bringing up the tough issues and pushing back, right? Especially sisters. Sisters, you have to push back. We seem to think that a sister just has to be this like docile and, head down and don't speak, don't even look up and just like accept. No, that's not, that's like the Bollywood movies, maybe like when they go to the house.
But don't you find that it's the opposite now
there.
in today's society, Hassan, that the women are speaking a lot and they're very loud and they actually are asking a lot of questions, and some of these potential men are finding it very difficult because they're not actually up to par.
And that's my thing. It's like, well, hey, it's actually making men raise their live up to the standards that we're supposed to live up to. At the end of the day, like I'll be the first to tell you, like it's a positive thing in my eyes, because dudes are just sitting down playing video games, and I can say this because I'm a man, but that's what I see. Like I was talking to someone the day before yesterday, and they got married about a year and a half ago, and they basically just like their husband just like sits down and plays video games all night, and then Fajr comes, they don't even pray Fajr, they just go to sleep, right? And the sister was literally telling me, how does he expect me to respect him as a man when he can't even wake me up for Fajr? When I'm the one waking him up for Fajr, when I'm the one that's like getting up and praying while he's going to sleep, right? And this man is almost 30 years old. So it becomes like, well, he's not like some 22-year-old kid anymore. He's a grown man. So I love that sisters are like putting the brothers through the fire a little bit, Obviously, there's a balance to everything. I'm not over here advocating that sisters just like, there's always extremes. We know there is,
yes,
especially in this society. Right? There's always extremes, and I'm always an advocate for balance on either side, right? I'm always an advocate for balance, and that's why some of these movements, I have problems with them just because they go too far left or too far right. I'm like, Islam is the middle path. We have to be balanced in everything that we do. It's not men against women, it's not sisters against brothers. We don't do that. That's not Islam. That is the Western notion that's now trying to seep into Islam. Yes, but that's not what we do as Muslims. Right? We have to be balanced. We have to be prophetic. And really, to be honest, if we go back to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we will see exactly what to look for in a spouse and how to find those things. But a lot of us don't even know when the Prophet ﷺ was born. Sister Fahima, we don't even know when he was born, let alone how he dealt with his wives or how the wives dealt with him, and so on and so forth. Right? It's a huge lack of understanding of our deen that really gets us into a lot of these issues that we have, premarital and postmarital issues that we're facing. So that's my long form answer, I guess. Short form, long form. I'm not sure if it was too long, but yes, I would reiterate to say that spend a lot of time with the potential spouse. Of course, in a halal manner, but spend as much time as you can with them. Get to know the ins and outs. How do they treat their family members? If they have sisters, how do they treat them? If they have brothers, how do they treat them? What do people around this person say about them? And not just people at the masjid, but people that they travel with, people that they've been roommates with, right? These are the people that truly know who the person is, how they are on the day-to-day. Don't just go to the masjid and be like, oh, mashallah, the brother's pious, he's always here for Fajr. Alhamdulillah, check on one end, but what about the other end? The societal aspect, the relationships. How does he treat people? When he goes to the coffee shop, that he frequents, what do the baristas say about him or her? These little things that we don't think about, they're actually quite important. And I always tell people, go on coffee dates because it'll really teach you a thing or two about the person.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And honestly, you could go on for a longer, and I'd be quite happy to listen to you, because what you're saying is so crucial. And these uncomfortable conversations, a lot of the brothers and sisters do find that they feel they can give it a miss, because as long as there's the attraction between them and they have a few things that they are in common with, and they have a few things that, they can actually sort of like connect with, and having that connection. But we need to do a lot more groundwork, which is why we're talking about this tonight. And honestly,
Yes.
you've highlighted something extremely important with regards to looking beyond just the surface, and even going into watching each other's actions and your own, and even outside themselves with family and friends and whatever it may be. So again, that is quite difficult for a lot of people to do, or they feel that it's gonna I find that they feel that it's going to severe ties, because they're so desperate to get married. They're so, it's so difficult to find the one. So when they find the one, they will ignore all the red flags. So they don't want to even see the red flags, or they'll color it even a different color at the beginning just to make it work. So absolutely correct. We need to actually highlight that. But we are coming into another break, and we're going to continue this conversation. If you have any questions or queries, please do send them through. And inshallah, we're going to continue with the conversation. But honestly, with only your assistance, that we can gauge more and understand more. But we will be back in a few moments. Please do not go away, as we have an amazing guest tonight giving some insights. And we will continue in a few moments. Take care. Salam. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. Again, having a wonderful conversation with our guest tonight, Hassan, all the way from Atlanta. So before the break, Hassan, I mentioned that people are quite desperate to find people, because it's so difficult to find their match, that when they do find their match, what you're suggesting, what you're saying is only going to make them feel scared to lose that partnership, because they're like, wow, we've been searching for years. Now we found someone that there's just interest. And for them, that's enough. Okay. Which is fair enough, because it's a very disposable world, because people are in and out all the time, talking, not talking, ghosting. We've got such a different sort of way of living and being, and there's so much availability, yet there's not the quality of the availability that is actually coming. So people think that, the grass is greener, we're going to keep trying, keep talking, keep messaging, whatever, to so many different people, and we're not going to commit to the one. So when one does show that interest, it's so difficult for them to sort of like, now let me just, see what they're all about. And that could maybe shake that foundation, and they're a bit scared. What do you do in that situation? And how do you encourage people to still continue in that quest to find the truth of somebody, to make sure that they are your match? Because it's not just about finding somebody, but it's the journey afterwards.
Right. So the first thing that I would say to that is, you're not here to please anybody by getting married. Okay. The marriage, yes, it's a sunnah. It's an encouraged sunnah, but it doesn't make or break your iman and your closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That needs to be very, very clear, because sometimes I think we get things misunderstood, right? The Prophet ﷺ did encourage us to get married. He did. And he told us get married and have a lot of children so I could be proud of my ummah on the day of judgment. Absolutely. Absolutely. But there were also prophets who did not get married. And there were also the best women who lived. The best woman who ever lived never had a husband, Maryam alayhi salam, right? This was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that he chose her above all other women of the world. And this is a woman who did not get married, right? We all know she had Isa alayhi salam, but no man ever touched her. So how can we then equate marriage to success in, deen? We do that a lot, and I think we need to really step away from doing that, and we need to question why we do that so much, and where did it come from? A lot of it is
the
culture.
first time someone's ever said that in the way you have, actually, because we have got so much societal pressure, especially on women, and it's the first time ever that someone has highlighted in that aspect, because we do talk about Maryam alayhi salam, right? And obviously giving birth to Isa alayhi salam, but not of the fact that she was not actually married, and it didn't make her any less of a human being. And I think what you just said right there is amazing. Not to say that
She
we're
was
not here
single.
for marriage. Yeah, we're here for
Absolutely.
marriage. We're here for relationships, but it does not make you any less of a person. And that's what the
That's the
problem is
point.
in culture. I love
Thank
that.
you. That's the point. The point is that we need to, again, we're going back to balance. We need to be balanced in everything that we do. For me, I always tell people if anyone says anything about Hassan when he passes away, it's saying that, he was a balanced Muslim, right? He wasn't too much on the left or too much on the right, because that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, right? He didn't tell us to starve ourselves throughout the year. He told us, look, there's 1 month of fasting, right? So use that to fast. Every other time, food is halal for you. And even in that 1 month, you break your fast, right? You're not praying all day and all night long. There's certain times of prayer and then there's certain times of rest. You see what I mean? The Prophet ﷺ literally encouraged not to read too much Quran, right? He said that balance it. Spend time with your family. Your family have rights on you. Your own personal self has rights on you. And Allah has rights on you. Everything is about balance. So yes, we are encouraging marriage because it's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And as Muslims, we always want to follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But it does not diminish you as a human being or as a Muslim or a Muslimah if you don't get married early or you're finding it hard to get married. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't say anything about you as long as you've done the work. Right, it's very important that we realize that. That's the first thing that I would say to anyone. It doesn't say much about you. The second thing about that is, look, we're all human beings, all right, and we all want companionship. We all do. There's nothing wrong with that. But to rush it and look for this, what we call instant gratification. We live in this like microwave society, like I call it, where you just put something in the microwave for 2 minutes, boom, done. Right? No, you have to take your time because this is a lifelong commitment. And we all know that. How can you rush a lifelong commitment when you're picking let's just say your major in university? You take your time with that. Why? Because you know what? If I mess this up, this is for the rest of my life. You don't rush and pick your major just because someone's forcing you to. No. And when you pick it, sometimes you go and you be like, you know what, I want to change it to something else. I want to change it to something else. Usually because what happens is you change and you grow and you adapt, right? That's human nature. So who you were maybe 6-7 months ago is not who you are, 8 months later. So if you don't take your time and you rush into it because of societal pressure, family pressure, it's usually family pressure, or all of my friends are getting married, as a sister, I'm getting older, and what is it, my biological clock and all of that nonsense, it's like, come on, man, like, let's move away from that. Khadija radiallahu anha was not a young woman when the Prophet ﷺ married her. And Sauda radiallahu anha was not a young woman when the Prophet ﷺ married her. So what? What did that say about them? These are our mothers, the best women who ever lived. So we need to take our time. When we force it, that's when things go haywire and they go wrong. Take our time and do the work, do the right thing. And saying like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna ignore all the red flags. Guess what? Those red flags, they turn into like, bigger red flags later on. And in your marriage, those red flags are what's gonna break your marriage anyway. So what'll happen is you'll end up going in that cycle of being married, getting divorced, and having to start all over again anyways. So why not just take your time and try to do it right the first time around? Now, if you do everything right and you take your time and it still ends in a divorce, that happens. We all go through it. I myself got a divorce. It's not like, oh, I'm sitting here saying like, well, I'm a failure at life now because I'm a divorced Muslim imam, whatever you want to call it. I hold my head high and I know that, better people than me have gotten divorced. So I'm not going to sit here and make it seem like, I'm a failure. And unfortunately for our women in society and not even in society, but more so in the Islamic field, in the Muslim world, being a divorcee has the stigma that comes with it. And it's so beyond sad. And I hate it with all of my heart. And I always tell people, you know what? There's one sunnah that I want to follow, which is marry someone who has been divorced, because that is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, multiple times, not once. And the Prophet ﷺ, I don't know if we know this, but he didn't marry many quote unquote virgins. Most of his wives were married before. Most of his wives were married before. I just want to put that out there for anyone. And some of them had kids from previous marriages, i.e. Khadija radiallahu anha, the first one, you know? So what is this stigma? Like, where is it coming from? Because it's not in our deen. You know
exactly.
what I mean? So
well, that's the crucial, the crux of it, really, is because just like how, you know, I know I'm going to go slightly off topic here, but just like how we talk about being monogamous as well. I mean, it's kind of like a Western ideology, really.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've
Right.
adapted that. Okay. And I'm not to say that, you know, I'm here not to say, you know, we need to stay in, you know, in sort of, you know, several sort of relationships. But I think Islam has a solution for a lot of things that we may not be used to. And what we're not used to is an influence which is not from our deen exactly. That's what we need to clarify. And I only understood that myself as I got older, and actually also in a position where it was challenging for me too. So I hear you and I get you. So I think, again, there is a lot of pressure, especially for women, and you get a lot of, you know, men talking about how, you know, after their certain age, it's their sell by date, and they can't, and they look for the attractiveness and the youth and whatever. But then I think people like that are speaking, again, they're speaking from the lens and of the dunya, not necessarily from a God-centric way as well. And I think what you just said highlighted that to me. So anyone that comes up to me or generally speak in that way, it's thinking, are you speaking from faith, or you're speaking from where you just think, you know, just because Islam says one thing and then you coinciding it with something which is not Islamic to make someone feel lower because they're not married or because they're of a certain age or because they have a status which is divorced, like you said. Again, you know, that's not Islamic. I think what you said as a man is powerful, and it's really, really needed. And I'm going to post this clip 100 times over when I.
And you know, something you said earlier, actually, about you yourself coming to a different realization, or so to speak, an epiphany once you got a little bit older. You know, and I think a lot of these things come with experience and maturity. Like, I think almost 100% of it, because now looking at it from the other side, I'm like, okay, like I've seen a lot post divorce. I've seen a lot, and I've been paying attention to a lot of things. And one of the things is that specifically with that point of polygamy and monogamy and whatnot, I see a lot of sisters who are a little bit older, who are a little bit more seasoned and mature in their thinking, and are also more so Islam over my own nafs and my own desires, because there is always a battle, right? And what'll happen is, once we get a little bit older, once we've gone through much of life, and we're just like, you know what, I want to be more God-centric now. Then, you know, the Islam starts taking that you know, that step forward, and our own desire. We say, you know what, let's lean back, and you start to understand that, oh, this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said what he said here. This is why this is good for me. This is why that is good for me. So I was blocking my own self from understanding it because of my own desire, my own nafs. A lot of us really live life based on our nafs. I can't stress that point enough. A lot of us. And if we take a step back and let Allah take the wheel, we'll actually realize, all right, I'm good. I don't actually have to worry. Because everything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in the Quran and has put in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of it is good for us, right? There's nothing that is detrimental, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfect. He wouldn't and he loves us more than we love our own selves. So why would he then introduce to us something that is going to harm us and not benefit us? It doesn't make sense. But that goes back to you being God-centric, and your focus is Allah is first and everything else is secondary. Right?
Absolutely.
It really does go back to that.
It does take time. It takes experience. It takes a lot of adversity as well. It's not even about the age. I think it's about the adversity, because people have experienced adversity at a young age, and they can actually overcome this and understanding and have that sort of maturity even a lot younger. So it's not really about age. But we are coming on to our final break, and we're going to be back in a few moments. Please do stay with me as we end the show with a bit more discussion with our guest tonight. And I hope to see you in a few moments. Make sure you stay tuned, as we are going to have the final part in a few moments. Take care and see you soon. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. Again, I'm so grateful for my guest tonight because we don't have people that just come from, profession. But tonight we have someone who has experience and knowledge with the deen, with Islam, with faith, as his studies has shown, as well as psychology together with it. And I think it's so useful to understand that. Before the break, Hassan, we spoke about building your nafs. Now, explain to us, how do you go about that? And how do you sort of, get to a stage where you are actually building and you know what to do to build it? Because we can talk about these things, but we need to give some practical tips so that we can actually, put it into practice.
Yeah, great question. Much like everything else, I would say the nafs is a being that needs to be fed. And depending on what you feed it, right, it can be, malnourished, or it can be, mashallah, look like you just came from the gym and, working out and all of that good stuff. So what I'll say is, what are we feeding our nafs? In society, more often than not in today's society, it's easier to feed our nafs junk food, right? And I'll just put it in terms that we can all understand. It's easier to feed our nafs junk food because it's so accessible. It's out there, right? All of the nonsense that you want is out there. And it's not only easily accessible, but it tastes better, so to speak, right? At a first glance, it tastes better. What that means is Shaitan makes it look like it tastes better, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that in the Quran, where he says that they were like the ultimate deceiver deceived them. It's all deception. It's all deception. Even this world that we're living in, it's all deception, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what is the reality. The reality is the next world, The reality is the next world. It's not this world. This world is a temporary. It's like you go into a classroom and, you're there just for an hour and a half, and you decide to bring a couch, bring, your bathrobe, bring your bed, and set up in that classroom as if you're living in that classroom forever. And then the hour and a half passes, and then you have to leave everything you took there and leave and go get out of the classroom. That's what we do in this dunya. We build up this dunya so much, right? And then what happens is we hate to go from what is built to what is destroyed. And what happens is we destroy our akhirah. When we're building our dunya, we're destroying our akhirah. And no one wants to go from what is built to what is destroyed. No one, So in that way, we have to learn what are the steps in getting rid of that junk food from our nafs and feeding it the good food, the spiritually good food. Yeah? And it starts with, number one is intention. You have to be willing to do it. How can you say that, I want to work out, and then you're just like laying in bed? No, like the intention has to be there and it has to be strong. We think that it's going, we somehow feel like Islam is supposed to be easy. Like if it's a little hard, I'm just going to leave it alone. And that's just a hard pill to swallow. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say that this world was going to be easy. He literally said it's going to be full of tests. Do you think that you're just going to say that you believe and you'll be left alone? He said, no, you won't be left alone. You will be tested. وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Right? We will test you like we tested those who came before you, because your iman has to be put through that fire. And that the word fitna actually literally means to put something through fire. So what happens when you put gold through fire? It removes all of the impurities from it. It removes everything that is impure from it. But it has to be put through that fire. It cleanses you, So the intention is the first thing. And then after the intention, you say, you know what? I want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to clean my soul. I want to clean my nafs. It's full of nonsense. What do? Start removing the nonsense from your daily routine, from your weekly routine, from your monthly routines. You have to do that. You have to start removing it little by little. The Prophet ﷺ says, أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. The most beloved deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those that are consistent, even if they're very small. So why don't you consistently start removing the negative things, whether I don't know, I'm just putting it out there, whether it's music that you listen to that's like garbage. I stopped listening to music years ago because I saw what it was doing to me. I'm not putting a fatwa out there for anybody. I'm just putting it out there. Hassan, stopped listening to music, and I saw the quality of my life improve spiritually. because I saw that it was taking me down. It was negative. It was just nonsense, full of alcohol and womanizing and drug use and curse and it's all filth. And that's what I'm ingesting into my brain, into my heart. How can I then say that, oh, I'm struggling? Of course we're struggling. Because if you actually look, if you were able to look at your heart, your spiritual heart with a microscope, all you will see is black, 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 black all over it, right? Because you've ingested so much filth. So start removing that filth little by little with the music that you listen to, maybe with some of the things that you see with your eyes and you watch with your eyes, you know, the places that you frequent, you know, the way that you speak. These things are practical ways that you can get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without even really doing that much quote unquote ibadah. This is just from removing the negative. Now, once you start removing the negative, what will happen is now there's space for the positive to come in. I'm sorry, but if your heart is full of the black, even if you start reading Quran, I'm sorry, but like it's being blocked, right? It's being blocked because the filth is too heavy in it. It's too heavy with filth. So you have to remove the filth. Once you remove the filth, then you can enter and say, you know what? The Quran can start entering my heart. What do people say? You know what? I read Quran, but like after like 30 seconds, I start yawning. I get tired. I said, number one is what is your heart filled with? And number two, that is the trick of the shaitan, right? Yes. Our hearts are filled with the things that we love. You know, the things that we love is the stuff that's out there. And so now when we're trying to, you know, combat it with Quran, how's that going to work out? You know, it doesn't make any sense and it won't work out. You know, you said
something so important. You said something so important because we are coming also very few weeks to Ramadan, and a lot of us, you know, struggle as much as we look forward to it. You know, we want to cleanse ourselves and start fresh. But, you know, what you said is so profound, you know, removing things, and don't just wait for Ramadan. You know, it's really starting from, you know, we say Rajab and Sha'ban, and even practicing with the fasting as well, so your body's used to it. But at the same time, I think what you said is so important, removing that negativity. And as much as I've heard it before, but you know, you've given me such a reminder. And I think a lot of us, when we are trying, like you said, you read Quran every day, and you know it's not really getting, and you make dua every day, and why is my, you know, sort of like, you know, not answered, my prayers are not answered. That's a very common thing. You know, why am I not getting married? And what you said is literally the answer. It's the blockages that we're not looking at. 100%. I think that again is what makes and breaks a solid relationship. Is this is what you've just said right now, is working on yourself. You know, when you even bring in the psychology into it, what you said is literally it. That's it. You can't say anything better than that.
No, we know that's the thing. We're, alhamdulillah, we live in an age of technology, in an age of information. So we know the things that, you know, we know the things that we're supposed to do. Yes. Reading Quran, praying, the tahajjuds. I'm telling you, if you master tahajjud, your life is great, you know. But the problem is, we don't know that, you know, we have to remove the other things, you know, like the scholars say that, you know, the heart cannot have two loves, right? So you can't have the love of music and the love of Quran living within the same heart, you know, and I truly believe that. And you cannot love this dunya so much and also say that you want to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. You can't. The dunya is a means to an end. We're not supposed to fall in love with the dunya. The dunya is supposed to be something that we hold in our hands and have in our pockets. It should never enter our hearts, right? But we allow it to seep through and enter our heart. And then we wonder why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot come in the heart. It's because you already, like, the dunya has already taken root inside of your heart. You already love something. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you cannot be polygamous with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A'udhu billah, right? With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you either love him or you love something else, right? And that's why we don't associate partners with Allah. Yes. Right? What is the biggest sin? It's shirk, right? And a lot of us, and this is going to be hard to say, but a hard pill to swallow. Not hard to say because we got to tell the truth. But a lot of us, we commit minor shirk in our daily lives. Yes. Right? What do I mean by that? I mean, when we put other things ahead of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is minor form of shirk that we're doing on a daily basis. It's time to pray, but I'm at work. What are you saying now? My work is more important than Allah. What do you say? What is that? That is literally what the definition of shirk is. You're associating
Hassan, you've
something else
been
and putting it to
absolutely
Allah.
amazing tonight. And I know you've got so much more to share. And honestly, I could sit with you for another hour. It's been absolutely amazing to be, having your presence with us tonight. And I think that, whoever's missed it, please do rewind and watch again. And, definitely take note, because you've given us such valuable information tonight. But we do have a couple of minutes left, and I want to leave it with you sharing. If anyone wants to get hold of you, if you're happy for them to come to you, please share that, plus some final words before we end the show. We've got a couple of minutes left for that.
All right, excellent. The hour went by really fast. I love the show. Thank you for having me on. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, my Instagram is I am Hassan Faye. I am Hassan Faye. That's I and then AM Hassan, HASSAN FAYE. You can get in touch with me through Instagram. I'm not one of these interesting folks who don't answer their DMs because they feel like they're an influencer or whatnot. We're all just human beings trying to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you DM me, I will do my best to respond to you when I have the time to. You can reach out to me through that. And if you want to maybe email, you can also email me at hassan.faye@gmail.com. That is hassan.faye@gmail.com. Those are my social medias. I have Facebook, but I don't really use it. I don't do TikTok.
Fine. We have a minute left. Any final thoughts before we end? In a minute.
Okay, so my advice to everyone is don't rush into marriage. Take your time. Do your due diligence, and your worthiness is not tied to if you're married or unmarried, or whether you got divorced or you're not divorced, or whether you're finding it hard to get married or not. That is not where your worthiness comes from. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already given you worth by just you being alive and you being Muslim. That is my final word to everyone.
Thank you so much. You've been so inspirational, and I love the work you do. And inshallah, you'll be blessed to continue with all of that and so much more. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us tonight and give us your time. Honestly, thank you so much, Hassan. And inshallah, we will hopefully try and get him back again, because we only touched the surface of this topic. Honestly, there was so much more to discuss. But inshallah, we will be back next week with another guest and topic. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching, and also all your messages and all your sort of solutions for the show. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening. Inshallah, we will see you next week, and take care. Assalamu alaikum.